Hi, I'm Krista Redpath, and you are listening to Around the Big Sky in Women's Hoops, a weekly podcast brought to you by Krista Redpath Media, where we break down the game, elevate the story, and champion the female voice.
Guess what? We're turning the page today. We're turning the page from college football season to college basketball season. And one of our favorite co-hosts back in the studio with us, Krista Redpath, another year of Around the Big Sky in women's hoops. Anyways, how you doing? I haven't seen you in studio in a little while. How you been?
It feels so good to be back.
Good.
So I've been following Hellgate High School all over the
are.
place, like Hellgate Hoops.
Yeah, so Krista has multiple children now at Hellgate, including Evan, the older one, who is what, junior now?
Junior, yes.
And Hellgate's off to a good start. Give us the update on the Knights.
They are. I mean, they had a struggle down in Billings against Billings Skyview, but really big win against CMR.
CMR is very good. CMR made a great run of the tournament last year.
Yeah, they kind of imploded against us. So, I think
that's sort of a turnabout fair play, right? Because Hellgate kind of imploded against CMR last year at the state tournament.
Right. So obviously state tournament most important time to put it together. But yeah, I mean, it's been fun to watch him. Obviously, it's pretty competitive on the West this year because I think Sentinel and Big Sky are tough.
Sure.
I also think the Helena schools are going to be right there.
Helena High's really good. Yep, definitely.
You can never count out Glacier. So really doing away with divisional tournaments this year, it's just going to be the top four that go to state. So it's really going to matter how you finish in the conference run.
It's going to be fun to watch. Speaking of Hellgate and Big Sky and Sentinel, they played Crosstown the other night, and Sentinel won on the boys' side and Big Sky won on the girls' side. So we'll dive further into high school basketball upcoming. But Hellgate certainly expected to be. I think it's actually be really fun. I think all the Missoula teams on both sides could be very good this year.
I do. I really think it's competitive, and I do think the East is pretty strong, though.
Totally.
So I think you just do what you can on the West, and then you're going to have to see them when you get to the state tournament.
Yeah, no doubt. The NFL playoffs start. Your San Francisco 49ers are like the one team
when I
that
see
was.
That on the outline, I don't really want to talk about it.
I know.
But yeah,
it's so funny because the NFL is so much about parity, right? And there's so many different surprises, but this year actually was a little bit less of a surprise in terms of like the division winners. Mm-hmm. The one biggest surprise I thought was the Niners just not being as good as everybody thought they were going to be.
Well, they really weren't at all. I mean, we had injuries.
They were decimated by injury.
And so I could get in really and break down each week if we really wanted to, but I think disappointing even when we played Detroit because we played well, and then it's like, where were we at? Like during the regular season to play like that. But we didn't have all of our pieces in place. So I am actually pulling for Detroit, which is weird. They're a safe team for me. I don't know why you just want to get behind them.
I mean, it's easy. Dan Campbell, man. Dan Campbell is the man.
Hate the Lions. You just can't hate them.
They've had nothing but, I wouldn't even say heartbreak because they haven't even ever been good enough to have their hearts broken. They've just had nothing but disappointment for forever, but since longer than either of us have been alive. So it is pretty cool that they are the number one seed going in the playoffs.
They really are. I mean, I don't like the Cowboys. I don't like the Seahawks. I don't like the Eagles. So those, I want nothing good for any of them.
Good for you. The Seahawks and Cowboys didn't make the playoffs. So
right. But meaning, like, if it were a team like that, I would not be saying that, so Detroit's safe for me.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, we'll see how it all plays out. Plenty more on the NFL coming up. Around the Big Sky Women's Hoops, presented this week by Vertical Raise. Vertical Raise, the elite online fundraising platform. More on our great friends at Vertical Raise in just a little while. We must start the show, though, on a somber note. This was news that certainly set ramifications around the state of Montana because she was such a pioneer, such a beloved figure around the state by a variety of different groups of people. But last week, Malia Kipp passed away. All-time great Lady Grizz, a trailblazer. Literally, the documentary that Megan Harrington did is called Trailblazer, about Malia Kipp's great career from Browning to the University of Montana. She was the first full scholarship Native American women's basketball player ever. And I know a dear friend of yours, and it was so sad to hear this news, but I know you got to attend her celebration of life.
I did. I was able to get to Browning the last couple days, and what a way to honor her, because there were 23 Lady Grizz with Robin Selvig, and making your way to Browning is not easy in the middle of winter, but we had teammates flying in from all over the U.S. and driving in, and it was a great way to honor her life. And Coulter, I was able to be with her during her last days here in Missoula. And it's sad to lose a trailblazer like Malia. But what we were able to honor in Browning it really showed just how special teammate bonds can be. I was a freshman when Malia was a senior, so I didn't redshirt. So I had a special relationship with her, and that she very much mentored me. I actually ended up living with her as well, so a roommate. And yeah, I just think that there's things about Malia that all of us can learn from. And she was an example for not only young Native women, but for young girls in general and all of Blackfeet Nation, which was so welcoming to us up in Browning. It was really neat to see everyone wrap their arms around the Lady Grizz community. And what stood out to me too as well, Coulter, is just it extends so far past the basketball court.
No doubt.
And so those relationships are lifelong, and I think that the Kips really felt love and loyalty from the Lady Grizz family, which is what we wanted to accomplish.
Well, certainly gone too soon, much too young. If you get a chance, read her obituary. I thought it was wonderfully done. It doesn't just focus on her basketball accomplishments, which I was happy about, because she certainly was a very accomplished athlete. I think it said she lettered in all three sports 4 years in a row there at Browning High School. She's one of the greatest athletes to ever come out of Browning, and then of course was a 4-year letterman for the Lady Grizz as well. But they talked a lot about her service and giving back to the community. She worked as an RN for almost a quarter century. She coached up on the reservation, coached at Sailor Scootney College, was really into animals, like rescued animals and stuff. I thought it was just a really sweet and great homage to her. So if you get a chance, go read that, because certainly she was somebody that had a huge impact for a lot of different people. I mean, she was a hero to very many around Montana during her time with the Lady Grizz. So it's so funny. I only met Malia a couple times, probably 5 times in my whole life. A couple times through this show.
Well, having her in studio. We had her in 2 years ago in studio.
And
last year.
This just broke my heart. I just couldn't believe how sad I was. So I can't believe how you guys are all feeling about this, but I'm glad at least it was a beautiful celebration for her.
It really was. And like I said, Browning is, Blackfeet Nation, like I said, they really celebrate their people. And it was really amazing for them to welcome us up on the reservation and to get a chance to all be together.
Well, the Big Sky Women's Hoops with Krista Redpath. Probably presented by Vertical Raise. Vertical Raise, the elite online fundraising platform. You want the biggest checks for your organization, particularly when it comes to sports organizations and high school sports. Vertical Raise can help you out.
Well, and our good friend to the show, Pete Hamill, has been a steadfast leader in the Missoula community, former Grizz player who's helped organizations such as Silver Lining and Grizz Kids. Pete loves what he does, an attorney by trade, but he chooses to make our Missoula community better. Here is Jack Young, who is the AD of Big Sky High School. Vertical Raise has been an outstanding resource for Big Sky High, allowing up to generate significant funds that directly enhance the experiences of our teams and student athletes. Pete's dedication and hard work have been pivotal in this process. He genuinely takes pride in supporting our athletic programs and is committed to fostering a strong sense of community among students. To learn more about Vertical Raise, visit verticalraise406.com.
Appreciate Peter. Appreciate Vertical Raise for all their support throughout so many different things they do. Our weekly Player of the Week during prep football season is so fun. It's great having Pete in studio. He loves it. He follows it so heavily. I mean, the guys at a game every single Friday night. I felt bad this last year because for a couple years, I would always call him, be like, hey, which game you at? Or he'd call me and, yeah, let's go check it out. Let's just go down to Missoula County Public Stadium. This year, new baby. I'm on the road a lot already. I didn't get a lot of Friday night. I shouldn't say I didn't get. I didn't take. I didn't want to. I wanted to be at home with my family. But maybe next year, when my young son is a little bit older, maybe he can come on down to a little Friday Night Lights. But either way, we appreciate Peter for all of his support. Let's talk Big Sky Hoops. The Big Sky Conference slate opened this last week. Better timing, I thought. Didn't you think the fact that it was right after New Year's? The last couple of years, there's been like these weird. First, it was like early December games. Mm-hmm. Then there was like mid-December games. And teams would start conference and then have a couple more non-conference and then go back to conference. I thought it was better that
we had that Summit League Challenge that was kind of thrown in there. But yeah, this seems much more fluid in that once we start conference play, all these teams are all in.
Totally. So I think that helps, no doubt, when it comes to just getting into conference play. I did feel bad a little bit just in the state of Montana, just because anytime the football season lasts into that first week of January, it kind of just sucks all the air out of the basketball. So, you're kind of like the secondary news brief, even though it is sort of a big deal. Well, let's start with the Lady Grizz. I'm sorry, I'm pulling up the scores from this last week. But let's start with the Lady Grizz because I actually went to that game. Lady Grizz had a 78-70 win over Eastern Washington on Thursday. Then they came back and they lost 63-50 to Idaho on Saturday. But just start with their league opening victory against the league champs. I know that Eastern certainly is in probably a rebuild after losing a lot from last year. But either way, Montana hadn't beaten Eastern in a little while, so what'd you think of that victory on Thursday night for the Lady Grizz?
Well, anytime you defend your home court and you start conference play off with a win, I think that's a success. I really liked the collective play of the Lady Grizz, but also just some individual performances. They finished with 4 players in double figures, which I think is really solid for them as they lean on different players to step up at different times. MJ Bruno had 15 points, which is great to see. I think the player that really impressed me, though, is freshman Avery Waddington. She's a player, Coulter.
She's a really
hooper.
Impressive player.
And to show poise as a freshman, she played 32 minutes against Eastern Washington and 30 against Idaho. And so Coach Holsinger is showing a lot of confidence by putting a freshman on the floor in those situations. And I think a stat that really stands out to me and something that was needed for the Lady Grizz was they had 4 turnovers for the game. And they just really had some issues.
Which is huge progress. I mean, to put that in perspective, at the West Palm Beach Classic, which was the Lady Grizz final non-conference foray right before Christmas, I think they turned the ball over something like 61 total times in 2 games. I mean, it was like historically prolific in turnovers, which is not something you want to have historically prolific in. So that's a huge adjustment. To go from 30 to 4 is big-time progress.
And so that's a nod to them because what you want to do is try to correct what you had with non-conference that you didn't like, and you're trying to get better. I mean, the season doesn't end in December. It's actually just kicking up. And, we're getting into conference play. So when I see something like that out of a team that I follow every single one of their games and watch them, I thought that was really encouraging. Eastern Washington is in a rebuild, Coulter, but I have to say Courtney Grossman is very impressive.
She's very good. Yeah, Billings West product. She's a true freshman there at Eastern Washington. I knew she was going to be good. Yeah, she hit the clutch shot of the state tournament 2 years ago in Butte to lift Billings West to the state title when she was just a junior. And then I thought she was as advertised last year, too. I mean, it's so funny when you have these transcendent players that come through Montana because any other year, last year's Billings West team would have been probably a state champion, if not in the state title game. Mm-hmm. But they had to play Brianna Williams and the Billings Skyview Falcons in the semis, and they lost because Brianna Williams is one of the best players Montana has ever seen. And so I kind of felt bad for those Billings West girls because they were going for back-to-back, and they were awesome. I mean, they had so many great players, not only Grossman, but Haley Haber, who's playing at Montana Tech now. And they kind of just ran into a juggernaut. I mean, Williams had like 38 points and 20 rebounds in that game, but I've always been impressed with Grossman, so I'm glad she's fitting in there at Eastern.
Right, like a 6-foot true small forward that to me, she had 14 rebounds against the Lady Grizz. She had 16 against the Cats. For a freshman to show that type of agility and athleticism, rebounding, to me is extremely impressive.
She's a crazy athlete, too. If you've ever seen her.
She is.
I mean, she was like an all-state volleyball player. She's an all-state track girl. I mean, she is a really, really good athlete.
So somehow, Coach Jody Gleason stole 2 fantastic Montana players because we also have Emily McElmary, which is the Missoula Sentinel product that we've got good minutes and played pretty well also in her debut coming back to Missoula. So 2 Montana kids that deserve a shout out on this show, and we'll continue to watch them flourish this year.
Big Sky scoreboard around the Big Sky women's hoops. Krista Redpath in studio. Here's what went down around the rest of the league. Weber State took down Northern Colorado at home 65-52. Montana again 78-70 over Eastern Washington. Montana State gets out a 59-56 win over Idaho. NAU gets a win on the road 79-71 over Idaho State in Pocatello. That's never an easy place to win. Idaho State turns around, though, and beats Northern Colorado 58-50 on Saturday. Montana State completes the weekend sweep 66-54 against Eastern Washington and Bozeman. NAU completes the weekend sweep 92-78 over Weber State in Ogden. Idaho comes into Missoula and wins 63-50, and then Sac State beats Portland State in overtime 76-74. So nice win there by Sac State on the road as well. To finish the point on the Lady Grizz, though, they get the win over Eastern, but then they turn around, they get beat at home against Idaho. So take us through that, what the Vandals do well and what was missing for the Lady Grizz.
Well, I had a chance to visit with first-year head coach Arthur Morera, who was on staff last year, but it was really great to actually officially visit with him after the game. And Coulter, I was so impressed with Idaho's play in terms of toughness. I look at that, they're made of all transfers again.
Yeah.
So again, we might have these players that are individually have come from schools where they've got numbers, but he had his team clicking and playing defense, and they were making the hustle plays. And it was just a lot of fun to watch this Idaho team. If you were an Idaho Vandal, for the Lady Grizz, it was tough. They hit some skids offensively, and they lose it on the defensive intensity as well when they hit these offensive lulls. And so that's something that Coach Holsinger is going to have to try to work out, is putting together 4 consistent quarters of defensive effort where they can really, lock down teams. This Hope Hassman, which is the Cal State Fullerton transfer, 20 points. She played really well. I think she's going to be a player to watch this year, and yeah, Idaho getting it done.
Well, Idaho, a nice weekend for them, too, because to go into the Brick and take Montana State, who's one of the league favorites, down the wire and lose by 3, and then come to Missoula 2 nights later and have a pretty thorough victory, honestly, and hold the Lady Grizz to only 50 points. Like, that's a nice weekend split. That sets yourself up pretty good if you're Idaho, at least coming out of the first weekend.
Well, and the Lady Grizz out-rebounded Idaho, and so for them to come up with, they just made it count. If they had second-chance opportunities, they scored it. They just made good decisions down the stretch, and it made me really rethink that some of these new coaches that come into the league, they bring in their own flair and their own style, and so I think this is going to be fun to watch this Idaho team this year.
Finding a little stability in Idaho, I think, would be good as well. We'll come back to that in a little while because they had such stability for so long with John Newley, and then it's been sort of just this roller coaster for Idaho. So we'll come back to that in a little while, though. Montana State, though, they get the weekend sweep, gutting that one out on Thursday against the Vandals, and then not a lot of trouble with Eastern Washington on Saturday. So what'd you like, what do you saw out of Montana State?
Well, what I liked about both games for Montana State is they held their opponent to 56 points and 54 points. So to me, Coach Binford puts her money where her mouth is in that she always stands behind her defense. They had offensive lulls, Coulter, but they weathered those by continuing to fight on the defensive end. And they were able to find those gaps on the defensive end and turn those into steals. They had 15 steals against Idaho. And so they're so loaded. They've got such athletes, and led by Esmeralda Morales, who I think has found her home with Coach Binford as an extension of the vision that she wants. We saw Mara Dykstra have just a Mara Dykstra game, 15 points. She plays close to 30 minutes a game, and she's going to be really key for them. As she's a steadfast player that's really come on in this last year. And I just go down their roster, having Caitlin Lamardo, who's now Caitlin Martin, so we got to use the married name.
Totally.
But Dylan Phillip is back, Ella Johnson, and then Taylor Sherrick is so impressive. And we got to stop for a minute and talk about her.
I'm glad you went here.
I mean, she is phenomenal. She had 14 points in the second quarter, but I'm like, where this player is like a Giselle out there, the way she runs the floor.
She is she's unbelievably fast. And this is one of those ones where a lot of times in basketball, when you're trying to gauge the metric of how fast people are, you can only really just watch the game and see how fast they get baseline to baseline and stuff like that. We know how fast Taylor Sherrick is. She's one of the fastest girls in the history of the state of Montana. I mean, she's the fastest Class C girl ever. And if she would have been competing at the AA level, she still would have been one of the fastest girls in Montana ever. I mean, she set multiple all-class records at the state Class C track meet last year, and it's translated absolutely full force. I was wondering, she played AA when she was a sophomore at Billings West, then transferred to Roberts. She put up some of the craziest stats you've ever seen last year. I mean, she scored 67 points in a game last year. But you're wondering, okay,
how does that fit? How does that fit with coming into the college
Is it just because they're playing against a school that has 5 girls in the entire school and everybody has to play so they can have a team? What's it even mean? She is not just like an impact kind of good, wow, this is cool that a Class C girl is doing this. She's like legitimately in their rotation as one of their better players. She's unbelievable defensively. Her speed translates across the board. And if she shoots it like she did on Saturday, I mean, good luck. I'm so amazed. I am blown away with how big of an impact she's been able to have early on.
Well, and if you're Coach Binford, I mean, you take a look at a player like that, and she's only going to get better. So you build,
there's no doubt.
You build around a player like that, but Coach Binford has the luxury. She doesn't need to build around a freshman because she has the ability to keep fresh legs on the floor as much as she wants. I think that looking at this weekend, one of the highlights for me, which everyone knows on the show, I'm a big Lexi Deaton fan. The Missoula girl that went down with a knee injury reminds me of myself because I also went down with a knee injury late in my career. And to watch her come back, I pulled up the Montana State game as I was at the Lady Grizz game. And to my surprise, I look out there and I see not only Lexi Deaton getting her 10 points, which she had a phenomenal game, but just hustle plays back on the floor, looks agile. And so that was a big highlight and huge for Coach Binford because to have a player like Lexi Deaton back in the lineup, she played 18 minutes in that second game. That's really huge for them because they are now fairly deep, 7-8. And that's not bad when you're a team that's at the top and you're expected to be at the top, but you also have that luxury of having multiple weapons and being able to rely on each of those to step up at different times. This is going to be a lot of fun to watch this Montana State team.
No doubt. If they can continue to coalesce, I think that they're going to be absolutely one of, if not the team, to beat in the Big Sky Conference. Around the Big Sky Women's Hoops, Chris Redpath, presented by Vertical Rays. Any other game or games that stood out to you from this opening weekend of Big Sky Conference play?
Well, I would say that the Portland State game against Sac State that ended up in overtime.
That was their standalone game. Everybody opened on Thursday except those two schools. This was their lone game of the weekend.
Yeah, and Sac State had not played since December 20th. So they had quite a stretch, and they had a 2-game losing streak actually coming into that. And they've been a team. We're going to talk more about them later in this as this series progresses, Coulter, because that's a team to me that's very fascinating. I think the game showed. This game specifically showed the parity in the league and that you have a team that might be more in the bottom of the standings. And maybe to me, Sac State's more of a sleeper that could come in and really make an impact when you look at the transfer of, Fatu Jaite, you got Jadia Martin, you got Katie Penawenta that's back. Benta Vierstig, who to me is one of the premier players in the league.
No doubt.
But then you just can't rule out Portland State, who just continues to fight. So that's a game I just really want to give a shout out. Aaliyah Fitzgerald had 27 points, and I think she deserves to get a nod on the show. And Rima Ogele also had 14. So just to me shows the fight in Coach Chelsea Gregg, and I thought that was a great one. The other game I wanted to bring up is the UNC Idaho State beating UNC.
Mm-hmm.
Now, UNC has been a team, they were one of the leaders in the country for field goal percentage throughout non-conference. So something's going right at Northern Colorado, but I really feel like Idaho State, just a tough matchup with this team, but they really handled the press well, and they showed that Idaho State continuing to be a defensively minded team. I was just impressed. I thought that they showed a lot of poise, and I was quite impressed with Tasia Jordan, who to me is also a very athletic player that we need to keep an eye on. She had 6 blocks in that game. And one thing that I loved, I listened to Coach Seton Sobolewski's post-game interview, just her recovery speed, in that she's just blocking shots. She can grab the rim, Coulter.
Wow.
So this is a player that I think we also need to keep an eye on, and it's been fun as we dive into Big Sky Conference women's hoops to watch these players that maybe emerge that we haven't talked about a lot on the show. So I think that's one that we need to recognize.
Well, the Big Sky Women's Hoops presented by Vertical Rays. Vertical Rays is the elite online fundraising platform to see how they can raise money for you and your organization. Visit verticalrays406.com.
So Pete Hamill, who we know is a friend of the show, creates participation competitions within programs and comes up with creative awards such as custom t-shirts made by Up Top. Pete has also spent over $10,000 on shoes and custom t-shirt incentives that make it just fun for the kids to get involved in fundraising. Vertical Rays is your premier online fundraising platform. There's a lot of competition in the market in the fundraising space, all good intentions. However, there are some real tangible differences now having worked with many multiple systems, being a Hellgate High School parent. Ease of use and a user-friendly interface are two differences with the Vertical Rays compared to competing products. Visit their Instagram page or verticalrays406.com to learn more.
More on Around the Big Sky and women's hoops, including highlighting the players of the week from the first week of conference play. That's next Around the Big Sky in Women's Hoops, presented by Vertical Raise. Vertical Raise, the elite online fundraising platform. Let's take a look at the Big Sky standings after just one weekend of conference play. Two teams sit atop the league. Montana State, Northern Arizona are each 2-0. Sac State at 1-0. They and Portland State each played the single game last week. Every team in the league will have that come around once, twice throughout the year. That's the Cats and the Grizz do that when they play each other. That's their single game week. Idaho State, Montana, and Weber all split, and then Northern Colorado, Eastern Washington go 0-2. Obviously, a long conference season, 18 conference games to be played, but how big of a difference is it between a 2-0 and an 0-2 start?
Well, we're so early, Coulter. So really, I don't feel like it's anything but momentum that takes you into the next week.
Sure.
And to me, these games were really competitive. There weren't any blowouts.
Right.
So to me, I look at that. When I look at the 0-2 start, and I look at Eastern Washington starts 0-2, but they played the Montana schools, which is arguably one of the toughest road trips to come over to Missoula and Bozeman, and they played them really strong and hard. And so I think anytime you get a win on your home floor, you just have to protect that home floor advantage. And so I think these teams maybe have a little bit more of an uphill battle when you start off at the bottom of the standings. But each of these teams has their strengths, and I think it's just too early to put a lot of clout around which teams started out without wins.
Big Sky Conference Player of the Week is Players of the Week, a couple. And a couple that's actually interesting. Sophie Glancy, Northern Arizona, and Fatu Jaite of Sacramento State. But these two young ladies used to be teammates. Or did they miss each other? I can't remember because Jaite left I can't remember when she left if Glancy was there yet. But Jaite was at Northern Arizona. They could have been teammates, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yes, because her previous high was 14 points against Montana for NAU in 2023. So she played 2 years ago. She sat last year. Isn't that pretty crazy? Both just premier players in the league.
I mean, great recruiting by Lori Payne to get both of them at Flagstaff at one point or the other. Let's start with Glancy, though. She's a familiar name, a familiar face, certainly. She's the preseason MVP of the league. I love her. I think that her game is so consistent. I love how efficient she is. And, she's primed for such a big year, and she's already having a big year. But tell us about her week this last week.
Well, she's the anchor for this NAU team, and it makes it so tough when you have that player that's prolific around the basket and, controls the boards. I mean, double-doubles are just common for her. So, when you take a look at that game against Weber State, 21 points, 14 rebounds, it's hard to argue with giving her Player of the Week. This is her third Player of the Week honor, and I would put her in the mix most weeks that NAU has wins. I do have to bring a shout-out to Leah Beatty. She was 6 for 6 from the floor, 4 for 4 from 3.
Wow.
I'm not quite sure what else she could have done, but I don't think you can have multiple nominees from your own school for Player of the Week. But I do think having a player like Leah Beatty enhances and makes Sophie Glancy better, because you
and
have
vice versa too, probably, right?
Absolutely. And so when I look at that team and I think about all the different assets and attributes that they bring to the stage, and then they have this player like Sophie Glancy, who is athletic and moves well for her size. You just can't argue with her stats. She had a phenomenal weekend.
That's why this NAU team is so well built. You can't, if you double Glancy, especially off of Beatty, you're dead. Beatty's going to knock it down. She's already probably a 44% three-point shooter, 45% around there. When you're Gardner, if you leave her wide open, she's making 3 out of 4 out of those probably.
Well, absolutely. She has not been Player of the Week this year, but I guarantee she will be when I look at how well she's playing.
Yeah, she's shooting it.
Huge asset to this Northern Arizona team. Big shout out. I spent yesterday with her aunt, Carla Beatty, at the service and had a chance to visit with her. She follows NAU, and it was good to talk about this team and how I feel like they are really coming together and gelling. We'll probably touch more on that in the show.
And Fatu Jaite exploded. You said, you've always been a fan of hers. She's a great energy player. But this was as good of a weekend as she's ever had by a long shot.
Well, yeah, she sat for that year, and I could see the potential in her 2 years ago. Fatu is athletic. She's strong. She has a nice feel around the basket. You knew she was going to be one of those players that only got better, and then she dealt with an injury, and I'm not sure exactly what happened, which we'll probably never know, but got into the transfer portal, and what a pickup by Aaron Koloff, because I think that is a very big piece to his team this year, is bringing in that agile forward that can make an impact on both ends of the floor. And Fatu Jaite does it as best as I've seen in the league. And she should be in the running for one of the top, I mean, if not all conference. I don't want to throw out Big Sky Conference MVP yet, but she certainly proved to me with her offensive surge and also her ability to rebound the basketball that she should be in the conversation.
28 points, doubles her career high. Very impressive. 6 of 7 from the floor, but 16 of 19 from the free throw line.
That was going to be my next. I mean, I have no idea how you can get to the free throw line that many times. But if that isn't an indicator of her athleticism, I don't know what is. I mean, to get to the line that many times just shows that you are in an attack mindset. And that's exactly what Coach Koloff needs.
Those two teams that sit atop the Big Sky standings, Montana State and Northern Arizona, they also have tremendous overall records, which is such a great testament to them taking care of business in the non-conference. Both of them played really hard non-conference schedules, too. It wasn't just like you were loading it up on non-D1s at home. I mean, you're talking about playing big-time schools. And, I mean, Northern Arizona had a couple Power 5 wins. So.
Well, they did. They had back-to-back wins against where they beat Arizona at home.
Right.
Okay, so let's just stop right there and just say you beat Arizona on your own home floor, which is pretty impressive.
It's just so cool that Arizona was willing to come there too, right? Like that would never happen to men's basketball. That's one of the reasons why men's basketball is so broken.
Yes.
Like Travis DeCure calls up Arizona or Gonzaga, or so they won't even pick up the phone. It's just silly. That's great though that NAU and Arizona got a little home and home going.
Well, and also just to take it a little bit further with NAU and their non-conference record, they also had a big win just 3 days later at Colorado State, which is just huge. But they beat Tulane, they beat Oral Roberts, they had a big win against San Francisco. So yeah, they really got it done in the non-conference, and you hope that some of these wins are also going to contribute to where you could be if you do win the Big Sky Conference tournament and where it will be for NCAA seedings.
And Montana State had some big-time non-conference wins as well, and that's why both these teams right now being recognized on the national level. They're both ranked in the College Insider Mid-Major Top 25 poll. The Bobcats come in at number 14 this week, and NAU comes in at number 19 this week. So pretty cool. And we're going to get to see the first matchup between these two teams coming up this weekend. So more on that here in just a little while. Around the Big Sky Women's Hoops, Krista Redpath in studio with me, Colter Nuanez. It's probably presented by Vertical Raise. Vertical Raise, the elite online fundraising platform. You want the biggest checks for your organization? You can visit verticalraise406.com. More on this week's upcoming games right after this. It's Around the Big Sky in women's hoops. Full slate of hoops coming up. The men are in the Treasure State this weekend when it comes to Montana State. The Montana men host Northern Arizona this evening, and Montana State host Northern Colorado. So those should be fun contests, certainly. And it's the flip-flop on the women's side. So here's what the women's schedule looks like. Montana State at Northern Colorado, Montana at Northern Arizona, Portland State at Eastern Washington, and Sac State at Idaho. Let's start with the game in Flagstaff. Northern Arizona has a lot to be proud of so far, but we're only at the midpoint of the season overall, and we're at the beginning point of the conference season. And this will be an early home test for NAU with both the Montana schools coming to town. What do you think of the Lady Grizz and Flag tonight?
Well, I think they're really going to have to come out and be ready to run the floor and be ready to deal with somewhat of a track meet, because Coach Payne will get up and down the floor, and she's focused on moving and pushing in transition, and she's trying to get her team to make sure that they take good shots. But the fact of the matter is NAU can score points, and we know this. And so Montana just can't start out where they dig themselves into a hole in that first quarter. We've seen that at times this year. We've also seen them play really great in the first quarter. So I think that's what they're going to have to do, is really strategy-wise is come out and really match that intensity and lock it down on defense.
That's one of the most sort of intriguing, but also, if you're a Lady Grizz fan or follower, frustrating part about following this Lady Grizz team over the last couple. I mean, this has been a pretty common trend for a couple of years. You're right. Like a lot of times they'll either get out to a great start and then have this terrible lull in the second quarter where they just disappear, or the opposite, start poorly, but then come roaring back with their hair on fire and close the half. It's been so rare that they've played a complete first half. And then they seem to settle in the second half and make some adjustments and all that. But it's just so weird how they either start really well or really poorly and then respond in the opposite fashion.
Well, and he started Isabella Zingaro, which is their center, who is a true center.
The big from Iowa State.
The transfer from Iowa State, and I do think that that's going to come into play if he starts her. He's got to make sure she's getting up and down the floor. He's probably going to put Avery Waddington in fairly soon if she comes off the bench. The one thing that I will say is NAU's going to let you shoot. They don't necessarily get up in your grill.
That's right.
And they will let you have opportunities. So if Montana can get going by making shots, they seem to feed off that, and then their defensive intensity picks up. I've said that all along. I feel like this team is like that. It's a really good sign when MJ Bruno has such a great game. I think Matt Koenig is coming along. She's made some really good decisions down the stretch. We talked about her in Big Sky Hoop Hits this year in our previous series, Coulter. Just the maturity for her is key for this Montana team because he has chosen her to be the point guard and to be the extension of him, Coach Hulsinger. And so, that play is really critical. Then we haven't really seen a complete game from Danny Barch yet.
Right.
We've seen moments where she looks like the greatest player in the conference, though.
Totally.
She'll hit back-to-back threes or she'll just make a play. But I think for this Montana team, they got to figure out how to put her in places to dominate a game. Put her in the high post, let her have one dribble and blow past somebody.
That's what I would do all the time if I was Montana.
Anytime she touches the ball, I feel like she could be one step ahead of everybody. I think the team just has to collectively get around her and figure out what is their identity. Where are they going to go when it comes down to it? Because we do know that NAU is going to put the ball in Leah Beatty and Sophie Glancy's hands when it counts. We know that. We got Taylor Feldman, who has a very high motor, who I've been high on. I think 2 years ago, she came in behind Regan Skank and did such a good job. Then she had to really kind of take the backseat to Grace Beasley last year.
Totally.
We've seen her play phenomenal. She's also gotten 2 Player of the Week awards this year. So I think they're going to have their hands full, the Lady Grizz, with trying to defend the multiple weapons. And then we haven't talked about the Moran sisters, who I feel, have put in a lot of minutes for NAU. And so you have these athletic, agile guard forwards that are scrappy and have good feel around the basket. Montana's just going to have to come out and really command their presence early.
Where do you do? I guess there's two main defensive questions I have for the Lady Grizz. First of all, and I guess one's not a question, it's a statement. NAU's going to run extended transition stuff, extended fast break stuff on every single missed basket. Like if they get the rebound, they're pushing the ball, period. That's what Lori Payne wants to do. They're getting up and down. Where do you go, though, with Glancy? Because that's what she does so well. She's not just a big that goes and gets in the post. She's going to beat the other big down the floor in transition over and over again. Where does Montana go to slow that down?
She is, but if you're Montana, you do not allow her to get that 2-foot post position.
Right.
And so that's huge. You don't let her have that position.
You remember the game against the Lady Grizz here in Missoula last year. Sophie Glancy must have gotten to the block and caught the ball 4 feet from the hoop. 15 times? She had 30 points, and she couldn't have taken more than 14 shots. It was unbelievable, the position she was able to get.
You just got to get around her, or they got to come up with some fronting, with some backside help. She's just a player that what you want to do, Coulter, is you just got to contain her because you're not going to stop her. So
right.
you want to create an off-balance shot. You want to push her so she's a foot outside of her comfort level. She's just one of those players. And so defensively, it's going to take a team collectively, working together out there. But you start with not allowing her to have just an easy, open 2-foot shot.
Do you put Barch on her?
I think you do put Danny Barch on her, but I think, honestly...
You kind of got a platoon, right, going waves.
He has his strategies for how he runs the defensive side of the ball. And so I think that you have to be able to fight to get around her, but then also if you're going to do that, you have to have that weak side help. So this is something that we're going to watch this Montana team hopefully mature over some of these defensive, I would say, different... it's hard because to me, I'm just such a fundamental. I was raised on man-to-man or 2-3 zone, and this is how you play defense. You make adjustments. It's a different game now. It's definitely more positionless basketball.
Totally.
Just constant motion.
Yep.
But I do think that you have to have some different rotations on the defensive end to handle a player like Sophie Glancy. So it will be interesting to see how Montana does this.
It'll be interesting to see how it goes in Greeley tonight, too, with Northern Colorado and Montana State. The last couple of times these two teams have played, it's been a rock fight. It's been all defense all the time. You're talking games in the 40s. But I do think both teams are much improved offensively this year, and just overall too, just in terms of the depth. Both teams were young and sort of struggling with injuries and all that last year, especially in the Big Sky tournament game that they played as the 4-5. But I do think they've probably made some progress. But I want to spend the last couple of minutes talking about then the matchup on Saturday between the two prohibitive favorites in the league, Montana State at Northern Arizona. I do think tonight's game in Flag plays in, because if NAU's limping off of a loss, that's going to be tough. Also, if they're sky high off a win, that could have some influence. I don't think either team can overlook tonight's games, but that's a primetime game at 2 p.m. in Flagstaff between Montana State and Northern Arizona.
Well, there's your top two teams in the league right there. So it's going to be fun because one of them isn't going to win. So one of them is going to be on top and one of them won't heading into the third week of conference play. I do think that Coach Binford has the defensive mentality to grind it out and make it look, be very difficult for Coach Payne to get into anything offensively. And I think what her strategy will be, let's make them turn the ball over or go a little too fast and take the off-balance shot, pass up great shots and just take good shots, because that's what you kind of want to do if you're Coach Binford. You might just try to make it ugly. And that's what she does. And she's got the personnel to do that. And then she also has the offensive weapons. And you got a player like Esmeralda Morales that's going to go toe-to-toe with Taylor Feldman. Taylor Feldman's been in a little bit of foul trouble over the last few games. So that will also come into play for both of these teams, is staying on the floor. You get like foul trouble for NAU, which you look at that and then all of a sudden Leah Beatty's taken over the point position, and rotations are a little bit different. Now, NAU does have Sanaya Neverson, who I think is a really good player that's coming off the bench for Coach Payne. But I think rotations come into play. It'll also be who takes care of the basketball. Turnovers become key. Second chance opportunities, it's always about that. Who's going to get those extra possessions offensively? It's definitely going to be the game of the week to watch.
I think the other one that's going to be fun tonight that I'll have on the rotation is Sac State at Idaho, because I think Sac State coming off the OT win in Portland, Idaho coming off the nice split in Montana. Both these teams are sort of upstarts. They got young coaches that are relatively new. Coach Kohoff at Sac State in year 2, and Coach Moreira there at Idaho in his first year. So that's a fun one to watch. We only got about a minute left. What do you think of that matchup?
I think it's going to be a really good matchup. And
yeah,
you're
I think
going
so
to see too. I love the way Idaho plays. I was so impressed with them, actually. As much as it was hard to watch Montana not get a win in front of their home crowd, I was impressed with Idaho. So Sac State, multiple weapons, different individual players that have proven themselves, but collectively, how do they come together? So definitely going to be a good one.
Around the Big Sky and Women's Hoops, episode 1. What season is this? I couldn't remember.
Season 5.
Season
Coulter.
5. Crazy.
I mean, we've been doing this for a minute
Yeah,
now.
I've been racking my brain on a lot of things because I couldn't remember. There was a moment in time the last couple of days where I couldn't remember anything. I couldn't even make the bed. But season 5, so we're happy to have you back, and we're also happy to have Vertical Arrays along for the ride. They help us with so many different things, our prep coverage, and also the first couple weeks of this fine show as well. Vertical Arrays, the elite online fundraising platform in Montana. You want the biggest checks for your organization, visit verticalrays406.com. Anything else to add before we get you out of here?
Well, I think this has just been really fun to get back into it and give these women a chance to headline a show. I mean, people love to listen and watch this, and they like to hear about what's going on, and it's a conference-wide show. Obviously, we pay a lot of attention to the Bobcats and the Grizz, but it's really neat to have this type of a show that gives the stage to represent and to also give a voice to some of these athletes that I think it's worth talking about, and they deserve these shout-outs. So it's going to be a fun ride, Coulter.
Well, great job by you for spearheading it, and thanks to everybody out there for listening, and great job by all these athletes, coaches, and programs for giving us so much fun stuff to talk about. And one last somber remembrance, rest easy to Malia Kipp, and the thoughts to her family, and certainly somebody that had a huge impact around the state of Montana. She was a star amongst stars during her time with the Lady Grizz, and certainly led a lot of young Native American people, but especially women, to believe in their dreams. And I think that's a huge part of the legacy of basketball as a whole in the state of Montana.